Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Vixen Voice. Today, we are talking about futurist AI and how technology should be playing in your business. And if you're sitting there going, April, what the heck are you talking about? Don't worry, we're going to break it down for you. So I'm super excited. My guest today, Marissa Brassfield, is the founder of Ridiculously Efficient. First of all, how cool a name is that? She is an AI advisor, efficiency coach, and work life balance. That's right, you heard it. She works in AI and work life balance. So I actually know Marissa through a mutual friend. Well, it's a client and friend of hers, and I'm a client of his and a friend. And we got connected because she was doing marketing work for him and helping set up. And we just really were attracted to each other's energy. We just she was basically doing marketing research, interviewing me as a client. And I was like, wow, this chick is cool. And then, I heard about her history and who she'd worked with and what she did. And I was like super impressed. And then I learned that we had similar spiritual journeys, which, if you ever listen, is very important to me. And so Marisa and I are actually in a spiritual group together. So it's kind of funny. We kind of connected energetically, intellectually, and via the heart. So, Marisa, so excited to have you on today.
Oh, so great to be with you. And I feel like you are such a beautiful catalyst, not just for me, but for so many women in this community. So thank you so much for having me on today.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'd like to dive in and just tell us a little bit about who is Marisa Brassfield. I mean, like I said, you have a fascinating work history, right? So, what I'd love to do is, if you could really potentially focus for our audience on some pivotal stories or a pivotal story that made you, this amazing woman in front of us. And by the way, not only is Marisa like all these amazing things that none of us understand anything about, but her favorite job is being a mom. So, wife and mom. So, she really does balance it all. So, Marisa, I'd love to hear like what is probably the most pivotal story in your history, and we'll go from there.
Oh, amazing. So yeah, it's always so fun to sit and go, okay, which one am I going to share? But in this moment, what feels great to share is
Mhm.
Um, so the last 15 years or so, I've orbited professionally around visionary entrepreneurs. These are people who live in the future. They are imagining how our world will function in 5, 10, 15 years. And they've just got that beautiful quality to build bridges to that bigger, better future. And they see problems and challenges as opportunities. And they always believe that there is a way forward. And I just thrive with surrounded by those mindsets and those modalities. I'm a super resourceful person. Grew up in Los Angeles, one of the very few who's born and raised here. And I actually live in my childhood house. This room I'm recording
Oh,
in is my
wow.
childhood bedroom. And the story I'm there is like one, I was like, ooh, maybe I'll tell that one. But basically my parents passed away in 2013 and 2014. My husband and I
Mhm.
were living in San Diego at the time, and we went, okay, do we sell this house and buy a condo? Do we rent it out and maybe have people come into my childhood house, which has been in our family since the 70s? And, maybe they've got some things to say about our baseboards or our kitchen or whatever. And then the third thing was the hard thing. And it's like, okay, do we move in and make it ours? So that's the journey that we've been on. And so during gosh, the last 5 years, I have been in my own hero's journey. Like if you look at Joseph Campbell and like the trial, so
Yeah.
2018, 2019, I'm top of my game. I'd been working 8.5 years with Peter Diamandis. We co-created a community out here. It's a global community, but based in Los Angeles called Abundance 360, which was all about taking very successful entrepreneurs, so running $10 million to $10 billion plus businesses. These are founders, CEOs, but also investors in private equity firms, and helping them understand the technologies that were about to become very relevant. Deceptive to disruptive growth is the phrase that we would use, but basically the things that seemingly came out of nowhere. So we experienced that with conversational AI back in November 2022. So having these moments that in my case I'd been looking at and studying for 8-9 years, I had a really robust picture of where the future was going. Some of the things that I saw that we weren't talking about that I felt we really could and should be talking about, who was and wasn't at the table. So I had all these like fascinations, and all these things are sitting in the back of my head. This will be relevant to our conversation later, but the story that I really want to share is when I left that role with Peter Diamandis. And for years, I thought that would be the final stop. I'm going to work the rest of my working days with this man. He's into longevity, so that'll be a much longer career than I had imagined. Retirement is not a thing, and I loved it. And then something happened. In 2018, the Abundance assets were acquired by Singularity University, and I discovered what happens when you build a business that you do not have equity in and that you do not ultimately own, which is the owner of that business can make decisions, and you may not be consulted on them, and you actually don't have a vote because you are not an owner of the business. So that was an interesting psychological realization. There's a lot of guilt and shame and like, oh, why didn't I negotiate a better position for myself? How could I not have seen this? La, 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 la. But the other thing was happening, which is, Peter was imagining his next big business, as so many entrepreneurs do. They have their business, it goes, it has its life cycle, they start another thing. And as a mission-driven human, that didn't really compute to me. Well, how can we just let this go? And now someone else runs it and owns it. Like I have got some ownership in there. Anyway, the high performance environments can quickly go toxic when there is no mission, when love has exited the room and it's and only power and money are sitting at the table still. And there was a moment where I had a realization, this could have been my dad whispering in my ear or my mom, I don't know, but it was just, your soul is dying in this environment. And I had that sense, I am dying. And so I left. I had a legendary, loving, and grateful and gracious conversation with Peter and quit. And my line was basically like, I will never bloom in your shadow. Like there is no version of me that can thrive with such a big personality. And just with where I had kind of outgrown the container, And so I took 2.5 months off. We went on an epic road trip, and this was about me and my husband of, at that time, 12 years, now 15, 16 years, renegotiating our relationship, renegotiating the terms, because for all of those years, my dear husband, Army veteran, all of these things, amazing human being, was leftovers. He got my leftovers. There was a backpack packed by the door in case I needed to go to the Van Nuys Municipal Airport and hop on a same day trip and come back and clear my schedule. And it didn't matter what we were doing, sitting on the couch, I could get a text message and my entire evening was now hijacked. Like I'm not wherever I was at dinner, on the couch, whatever. I'm fully in that work situation. And that just wasn't working. So we had those 2.5 months off. That's when I got pregnant. Go figure. I had no other changes in our lifestyle other than the removal of an enormous stressor. For a lot of us, work is a huge stressor. And then got pregnant, and that catalyzed a whole new set of experiences and transformation, because I had developed a reputation for 13, 14 years of being ridiculously efficient, and the level of multitasking, the level of emotional compartmentalization. Just like, I'm exhausted and I'm going to give you that loving smile and loving energy and compassion and peace. Like, talk about a spiritual awakening. So it's no surprise that got me to work with our mutual friend and coach, and just the journey has continued ever since. And it's I have a couple colleagues who are still working with Peter. I love them. I love Abundance 360 and the community. Many members that I brought on are still involved. And leaving that environment was the best thing I ever did in my career, in my marriage, in my life, in my health, and for my bigger future. It's just amazing because there were so many times where I fell onto financial hard times, or I'm looking at, the annual, P&L or whatever, and I'm looking at my financials. I'm like, oh, interesting. That number is a lot smaller than it was before. And there was some rebalancing that had to happen. But
Yeah.
the truth is also that like the stress involved in that environment had me like spending a ton on things that I didn't really need. So I definitely experienced lifestyle inflation. And all of those things really needed to be looked at, if I'm honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I hear you. There's so many things you said. First of all, I was tearing up when you said that your father or mother whispered to you, your soul is dying. And I think most of us have had that experience. I mean, for me, it happened at age 27 when I, met my ex husband and was in a relationship and, with the true love and working 80 hours a week at a law firm, like the top firm in Atlanta. And, it's your life. Like, you don't know. You're like, this is cool. All my friends work here. We go to dinner at 9 o'clock at night. It's no big deal. Like, I'm 25, 26. We're out drinking 4 nights a week, working 80 hours. I mean, like, you think back and you're like, that was freaking insanity. Like, what were we doing? And, someone else came into my life and a number of other things. Similarly, I saw some things going on that I didn't love about my job that, intellectually I loved it. I loved the social aspect, etc. But I realized, wow, this is not going to fill my soul. In fact, it's like opposite of what my soul's calling me to do. So I think, most of us who do work for ourselves and are on a spiritual journey have had that moment, and to some degree. So I just love that you had the courage to listen, and reflect because, you told your story quickly, but having, again, not been in quite that environment, but, our clients were Fortune 500. So same thing. I had a trip planned to Boston with my friends. Well, one of my clients called that day. Guess what? April's not going on her trip that weekend. Like I ended up going, but I remember running to the plane without my luggage, and I bought a hairbrush in the airport and showed up at my best friend's in Boston with a hairbrush right in my work suit. And she was like, what's going on? I was like, we need to go shopping tomorrow. Because I was like, I'm going on my trip. But, so I know that you were ingrained in that culture and it's hard to
Yeah.
like really get that across. So to have the courage to reflect and step away because really it was your norm, I can
Yeah,
imagine, right? To operate
very
like that.
much. And you get addicted to being needed,
Mm-hmm.
addicted
Yes.
to
And
having
the
all the
pace.
answers. The pace is addicting, the momentum. I'm doing so much. I'm feeling so accomplished. It's like
Yes.
all of the best parts of productivity, like, it's like it's enabled because it's like, well, look, you get accolades, you get social recognition, you get political
Yeah.
pull. But it's interesting. So our ancestors, I communicate with us in various ways depending on what we need to hear. And so there was that
Yeah.
whisper. And then when I was in my actual meeting with Peter, I haven't really shared this story, but it feels important now. I had delivered the news, and I watched Peter processing it, and he's putting his head in his hands and he's just thinking, he's massaging his temples and he's thinking. And there was a thought in my throat of, I'm going to say I'm sorry. And there was a moment, and it was like I opened my mouth, or I took a deep breath to say it, and I heard my dad's voice. It was a yell. Shut the F up, Brass, my last name, a nickname for my last name.
Yeah.
And it was like in
Yeah.
that moment, I was like, so I took my deep breath, I went, and I bit the sides of my tongue and my cheek. And
Yeah.
I let it out. But like there's those moments where I'm like, okay, that was something that is quite remarkable.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because I've met Peter because we were in a mastermind together, together, and I was already on my spiritual journey when I met him, and I was like, wow, this guy is so mental, because in our spiritual journey we talk about the mind and the heart, and if you watch Dr. Joe Dispenza, he talks about mind, heart, coherence and getting in your body. And I just remember like Peter almost struck me like a machine because he was so mental. That was like what my intuition came. So I can imagine this moment when you tell me he was grabbing his head and trying to digest, because I'm sure he was trying to intellectually like digest that, and you're really speaking from the heart.
Yeah.
So there was probably this moment of disconnect. Or I mean I can't speak for him or for you, but I'm sure there was an element of shock as well, so that was
Oh,
probably a big deal.
yeah, no, I mean it was a very significant moment and meeting and
Yeah.
time. And I think the note about communicating from your head versus your heart is an important one, because there was a moment where we
Mm.
couldn't logically, like, we went to a logical place, and then there was like, I'm just not going to bloom in your
Yeah.
shadow. Like, the person who should sit in the seat should want to be there. Like, there's just a
Hmm.
disconnect fundamentally. And it's I found that communicating from my heart is the only surefire way to go, because
Yeah.
everything else is
Same.
just so convoluted. It's so murky. You can't quite tell. A lot of times when people talk these days, you can sense and suspect that the energy and action behind the intent behind the words does not match the definition and meaning of the words. I see that
Yeah.
so often
Yeah.
in marketing, and then even conversations about AI, which is just
Hmm.
wild.
Yeah, and we're gonna go there. That's the purpose of this. And and I love the comment. I mean, it just shows what how much integrity you have as a person to say the person sitting in that seat should want to be there, because Peter, like many visionaries, is very driven. It owns his vision. And you're right, like I love thinking about it like I also owe it to this person for the right person to be in this seat, right? It's not right for me and it's not right for them. So like it should be a win-win situation for everyone at that moment. And you said one other thing when you were sharing your story, talking about your 2.5 months off, which, by the way, my first law firm, this happened to many of my friends. The moment they quit, they got pregnant. So I totally get it.
So looking back, I'm like, I think about how many women I've met who have gone through many miscarriages, and I just had one
Yeah.
last month, as you know. And
Yeah.
the the challenges with fertility and multiple rounds of IVF, or everybody's
Mm.
journey is different.
Hey, Marissa, hold on. We lost you. And I know you're
Ah,
telling a compelling story. I think maybe check your internet. You're getting kind of like, Emily, do you have any feedback? Yeah.
oh no, I'm getting 730 down. Let's see what up.
You're getting what?
I said I'm getting 760 down, and well, 34 up, which is probably what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
My upload speed is slow, slow, slow.
Which you're uploading on the video, but you're just cutting out where I can't hear what you're saying. And I know that you're talking about deep stuff. So earlier it was a quick blip, but yeah, you're kind of freezing. Um,
Hmm. If I change my audio, oh,
yeah, I can pitch it to you just saying, I'll start back at talking about the 2.5 months off and then we'll go
okay,
from
cool.
there. Um, okay, cool. Um, Yeah, and so one other thing you mentioned was how, after taking the 2.5 months off, you got pregnant. And, something came up for me, I'll share, but I know my first law firm, always when my friends quit or left, so many of them got pregnant, right? So it just happens.
I I don't know what to say about it other than it's wild now that I'm on the other
Yeah.
side of it, looking back at how many women who are high performing professional women have intense fertility challenges,
Mhm.
miscarriages, like all of these different elements that are affecting their fertility, their hormones, their all this. And so much of it has to do with stress. And I work a
Mhm.
lot with women and teams who are in a state of burnout, and I'm seeing these signs. And I don't want to project, I don't know people's medical situations, but
Right.
I'm thinking, gosh, that's a lot of cortisol to carry with you. Just our stress hormones, our adrenals are fatigued. There's so many things in our biology that can go out of whack when we are under such
Yeah.
chronic stress and working against our nature.
Well, what also came, and I totally agree, and now also we're learning how the chemicals and the products we put on our body and the supplements we take, like they completely disrupt our hormones. Like I've moved to really try to cut out as many chemicals as I can, which is challenging because all the former organic chemical free brands got bought by big companies that I'm sure they're not as pure anymore, right? So I recently found this company, Hugh and Grace, that's focused on this because of infertility in women and doing clean products. So I can't wait to start using their products. But what came up for me is I'm not sure it's always just stress. I do think it's stress, but for you, what came up for me is a matter of timing and also energetic blocks, just coming from a spiritual view. Because
Yeah,
think if you had gotten pregnant when that was your life, like where was there room for a baby? And as you shared, were you and your husband in a place to be parents, right? Because
no
you had to
chance.
renegotiate your relationship.
Yeah, no chance. And the reality is that we thought having kids was not in our future because we didn't
Really?
imagine. Yeah, we just thought like one of us was infertile. It wasn't happening because we
Wow.
had no other changes to our habits other than the job going away and us having some free time. So lots in there to unpack. But yeah, I mean, there we were in a dynamic where it was just us, and that was part of my conversations with my husband. Is from now on, we are the number one priority. Our priorities
Love
are
it.
our priorities. The things that we are working on together, like I'm not going to get interrupted at dinner anymore. I'm not like there's just certain things that aren't going to happen anymore and lots more things that are going to happen. And it's interesting because that mentality that life must come before work, that was like a permanent switch over. And even now I
Hmm.
the way that I schedule my days and my calls, it's so that I can always be with my husband and dog when we're walking our son to preschool and back, and so we have that rhythm
Love it.
together. And so that's part of his world now. And for me, the opportunity that we had in 2023, and I still believe is exists today, is in my case to figure out how I work, how I can use artificial intelligence, and then how I can combine those things, my gifts and technology, to work less. So to still deliver unique
Yeah.
value, to still produce the things that I need to do to you know express myself and grow my business and support client deliverables, but doing it in a way that was super supportive to my nervous system and my family
Yeah.
rhythms and our priorities. And last year that became a 3.5 day work week all calendar year.
Mm.
Now I'll work more than that this year, but it's not going to be anything like it was before. And I think the 3.5 day thing was almost like a dare that I had, where like I had to
Yes.
see if it was possible, and then and prove it possible.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm doing this year 3 weeks on, 1 week off. And that's my like, can we still hit our goals with this? So next week is my first week off because I actually took off the first of the year. We're recording this almost in February. So yeah, and at first it won't be total free days. It'll be more like catch up, do creative work, work on my business, the stuff I don't have time for when I have Zoom after Zoom after Zoom, and you just, don't have the energy left at the end of the day. So it'll be easing in, but my goal is by the end of the year that week is a true free week where I'm disconnecting from work and, enjoying other things about life because having a
Yeah.
startup, I have worked a lot in the last year, plus my healing practice, etc. So I want to rediscover the other parts of my life again. So I love us sharing this conversation because it invites the women listening to think, how could I reprioritize my time or where my time is spent? And as it completely changed your life to do that. And sometimes it's a small change. I had one client, she's like, I don't have enough hours in the day. And I said, pull up your calendar. I was like, why do you wake up at 7:30? She was getting plenty of sleep. She was like, well, blah, 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 blah. I go, could you get up at 7? And she's like, sure. Like, think about it. She just added 30 minutes a day times 5 is 2.5 hours a week, times 4 is 10 hours a month. That's a full work day, or time to work out, or time to do something else. So, there's always a way. You don't have to, like, resubmit a major change. Sometimes it's not that major, it's the small change that gives you space to be. But Marissa, you touched on AI, and that's what we're here to talk about. Your story is just so fascinating. So we're going to pivot there. And I'm going to share the reason I really wanted to have this conversation, other than just chatting with you, because I love that, is I am skeptical of AI, and it comes from my spirituality. And it's so interesting that we're talking about Peter because I know many people who were in Abundance 360, like you and I kind of ran in the same world, but we didn't know each other till the last year. And I thought about attending it myself at some point. And then, like I said, I met Peter, and I don't know, it just happened that I was listening to, it was an Abundance 360. It was a podcast or something he was doing. And this was in 2020. And he said, yeah, pretty soon, and I'm probably, not getting this totally accurate, but what I recall is pretty soon we can all connect our brains to the cloud and we can hear each other's thoughts. And that was the first thing that scared the crap out of me. Excuse my language. Because up till then, I was like, AI, yeah, I'm future. Like, let's do this. And I was just like, what? And I was like, gosh, I'm spending all this time and paying a spiritual coach to help me not hear my thoughts. Why do I want to hear everyone else's noise? Right. Like, I was just like, no. And so, at that time I would meditate. Now I pray and meditate. I don't even know that I was speaking to God at that point in my life. It might have been the universe or the quantum field. We're all in different places. But no, I guess God was in the concept. And so I meditated for 2 weeks and prayed, and it came to me. This is what came to me. They're trying to replace God. Like, I don't know how that came to me. And so I've always had one foot out and one foot in when it comes to AI. I'm not going to lie, we use it in our business for some things, but I'm always like with a grain of salt. So that was kind of the conversation you and I were talking about. And so, one, I'd love to hear like your feedback on how I feel. And I know there's a whole range of like people, and I'm laughing at myself because I hate it when I hear my clients say money is evil. And part of the coaching I do is to tell them it's not evil, right? So here I am saying, oh, AI is evil, which I don't fully believe. But, there's that spectrum to, oh, it's everything, it's the future. And most of us fall somewhere in between. So I guess, is the way I feel skeptical about it. Do you hear this a lot from business owners, or are most people jumping in and adopting it? Or, kind of what are you seeing out there?
I love this conversation because I think that AI and spirituality, these two things, it's this moment where there isn't a one size fits all solution. Yes, AI,
Yep.
no AI. So from the perspective of, and I share the cringe and about, for me, that was a big moment. I was like, okay, I guess I'll be the last analog human. Like, I want to take advantage of all
Yeah,
the longevity things,
me too.
but like I need to have sovereignty of my thoughts. I need to know that my thoughts are my
Yes.
thoughts. And this goes back to even 8.5 years with Peter and writing with and for him and ghostwrite. There were so, we had to kind of separate, and I went no contact for over a year because I needed to know what my thoughts were versus Peter's thoughts.
Interesting.
I can snap right back into the talking points at any time. I can understand, because so much of my role was helping people forecast how Peter might react to something in
Yeah.
addition to writing. So anyway, back to AI. Anytime, and this is marketers, this is business owners, this is visionaries, charismatic leaders. Anytime someone is overly optimistic about something and doesn't mention the gaping, enormous categories of conversations that need to happen, I get
Yeah.
suspicious. So if you also
Mm-hmm.
get suspicious, that's okay. And I think that what we're tuning into as non-technical people is the fact that here's this area that has the extreme capability to give unfair advantages. You
Yeah.
get, I mean, I've experienced productivity advantages. Like, there's so many good reasons to use it. And you start asking big questions about who owns the information, who controls artificial intelligence. Is it
Mm-hmm.
governments? Which governments? Is it private organizations? Which private organizations? Who appoints the leadership? Who are they accountable to? Are they accountable to shareholders and they'll make
Yeah.
decisions based on a stock price? Or are they accountable to a mission? What is that mission? What are the values? So, like, you just peel the onion, and there's
Mm-hmm.
so many different layers, each one of them important, each one of them not addressed in a meaningful way. We hear platitudes. Yeah, responsible AI should be developed for the benefit of everybody. Oh no, here comes Emily.
That's okay. Keep going. You're back.
Okay. Sorry, Emily. So we have all of these different unanswered questions.
Yeah.
And the big danger I see is that
Mm-hmm.
everyday people who are asking what I think are sensible questions,
Mm-hmm.
going, I'm not a technical person, I'm not an AI. No, it's not my world. It is absolutely our world. Artificial
Yeah.
intelligence algorithms run our
Mm-hmm.
stock markets. They will
Mm-hmm.
soon be running the infrastructure for all of the major systems and uh, that we use, whether it's education, the infrastructure of finance, and how money moves from one place to another, how
Mm-hmm.
stocks and index funds and mutual funds get chosen and optimized and balanced. Like, we're already seeing that happen.
Yeah.
Anyone who's used social media has been influenced by an algorithm and an algorithmic news feed. So artificial intelligence
Mm-hmm.
touches us all already. And so the fact that, I just want to invite anyone listening right now who might have thought, like, ooh, I'm not technical enough for AI. There's a researcher I follow named Ethan Mollick. He's a Wharton professor, and he does wonderful work in surfacing and sharing real research, academic research that's happening around conversational AI. And something that he found that was fascinating to me is that regardless of your performance band, are you a top performer, a low performer, everybody gets better with the addition of conversational AI. So there is some evidence
Interesting.
that we see some time savings, we see some productivity savings, and we see some results improvements. Now, here's another gray area, and this speaks to your message that they're trying to replace God.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Which,
a
by the
gut
way, I don't
check.
know who the heck they is. So, to your point of like, who owns this? What's doing? So, and like, this isn't some conspiracy theory, which we can see, but I'm like, I don't know who they are, but that's what came to me. So let's go
Well, it's
for it.
interesting because there's a
Yeah.
lot of atheists, agnostics,
Yeah.
Scientologists in big tech. So you already
Mm,
have these groups who have a polarized charge for against an ideology, and so
interesting.
that's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And then you think about tech. There's in my experience working with amazing visionaries, many of them are neurodivergent, and I love that. We need all kinds of brains, and that's why I'm asking like who gets to make the decisions and who's at that
Mm-hmm.
table, because not everyone sitting at a decision making table in big tech right now has an eye towards John Q. Public and the everyday
Yes.
mom who's just trying to raise their kid in an uncertain world. So I always tell folks that this is a moment when using AI to
Mm-hmm.
avoid, like a top trap to avoid falling into, is outsourcing your integrity and your discernment. So a lot of times I'll think, and we have these moments. Oh God.
Yep.
And we
No,
so
it's
a lot
okay.
of
I
times
gotcha.
we have these moments where we're using AI for this task. Do I use AI or not? And my thing now is I was
Yeah.
like, see, just there's some part of the task that you could probably do with AI, but
Yeah.
then it's like based on your skills and the things that you do best, there are things that should never go to AI. Like for me, I can
Mm-hmm.
always kind of point out and I'll know when something sounds or feels right. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
this document is ready to go. I can't outsource that final edit to AI. I might do some of the early drafting so I have something to react to, or other ideas, or I might use AI in a way that allows me to get different viewpoints, and they're simulated. But it's like, how would
Mm-hmm.
someone with this personality react to and receive this message? What are things I might not be thinking about in my leadership when I'm communicating to people who have different personalities, cultural differences? How could things be misinterpreted in our teamwork? Those are things that I'll simulate with AI, but not delivering a really tough message. I'm not going to outsource that. I always want to lead with my heart and do things that way. So, you're
Yeah.
right to feel, where are the gray areas? And I think having us sit within that feeling, like wherever it feels,
Mm-hmm.
don't put it into your business. There are going to be there are going to be business owners who say, our business, you can call, you're always going to talk to a human. You go into a store, you're going to shop with a human who understands and can talk you through things. And we're no tech. That's just how we go. You get a paper receipt. Like that is a legitimate business approach. And I'm not going to shame that
Yeah.
person the way you hear a lot of advisors, oh, you have to integrate AI in everything. It has to make sense for your goals, for the
Mm-hmm.
individual's role, and then for how, whether it even makes sense at all to use AI with something.
No, I love that. And first of all, I'm going to apologize to our audience. We are having some connectivity issues, so if you if you hear us chatting, that's why. But this is so great. I love this. I want to keep going, and I know we're short on time. So one idea I heard that appealed to me is replacing, and I think you and I chatted about this too, but taking the repeatable, duplicatable tasks and outsourcing that to AI so that, and then it actually allows we humans to use our higher faculties and the things we care about rather than doing the boring, redundant work. So that was like one concept I heard, and that it would actually, decrease our burnout, raise our level of creativity and creative thinking and problem solving because we wouldn't have these repetitive tasks draining that energy. So, is that, something you work with your clients on or that you see?
Yes. So we call them half tasks, half like hard, annoying, lame, frustrating. And I'll credit Joe Polish from Genius Network for that great acronym, which he
Love it.
describes for business, but I love it for AI as well. So for everyone, that those tasks are different. Some people get really
Mm-hmm.
energized by fulfilling and populating and maintaining spreadsheets and numbers AI does help
Oh,
with
yeah.
those things. And I argue
Yeah.
that there's some analytic brains, some forensic brains who are spending a little bit more time on the data entry part or the data organization part. And so it speaks to the cognitive load. So the amount, think of a computer, and if we have too many applications open that are running
Mm-hmm.
a ton of things, everything slows down and performance slows to a stop, even on the one thing you're trying to do. So I always think about like, where are we spending too much cognitive load? And with a lot of parents and entrepreneurs, it's not just the business stuff they're thinking about, but also personal
Yeah.
stuff. So I have
Yeah.
used AI to make recipes out of things that I have in my pantry. And then
Interesting.
layer on, okay, now give me some teaching cues and specific moments of this baking activity that I can use with my 3.5-year-old. What should I be mentioning and calling out? And then so it's like vocabulary words and processes and fine motor things. And so I'm working with AI in this way to figure out how to optimize an activity I'm already doing so that I'm spending less
Mm-hmm.
time on it, but I'm getting more joy, more fulfillment, and more results because I'm able to feel like, okay, now we're doing an educational activity with my son. Now I've plussed what I was already going to be doing, and now given him some exposure for some new learning. So I always try to think about, what are the things that you're doing that you don't necessarily need to do, that
Yeah.
you could, if you needed to, create an analog step-by-step checklist. And if you can write it down on a piece of paper or document it with a diagram, like if this then that, if this then that, you've got the start of an SOP, which, by the way, you can use conversational AI
Mm-hmm.
to flesh out into a real detailed SOP, from your sketches, your notes, and even your audio memos. So I love partnering in that way. So for me, it's so much easier to do than it is to document. So you'll hear, even in my
Yeah.
examples, that's a big way of how I'm using AI, is to build systems so that I can delegate, so that I can empower, in this case, my virtual assistant and my project manager to support me on all my stuff.
Yeah. I love the idea of using it to document systems because that's one thing I struggle with. And I don't know if you noticed, but I visually shivered when you mentioned a spreadsheet. Like, do not send me into a spreadsheet, right? AI can do the spreadsheets. But, there are other people who their joy and purpose in life is spreadsheets. And I'm like, great, I need you because I don't want to see it. Like, put it down to a dashboard for me. But no, I like the idea of the personal life too, because I'm actually in the process of, this is, I'm in a group with Natalie Ellis, a boss babe, like where she's mentoring us, and she has a whole life system that I heard about a year ago, and I was obsessed. I was like, I want to see her life system. Well, now it's part of our membership, like it's documented on Notion, and then they have the business HQ too. So actually, my COO and I are doing the business HQ for the business, documenting everything. And then right now, I don't have an executive assistant, but when we get back to me having one, that's their first job. Like, okay, I want this dashboard running my private life because I mean, I was up till 2 a.m. on Saturday booking airplane flights and hotels. Not that, AI could do that for me, but if I had it well documented that someone could help and take that off my plate, or planning my meals for the week, or a system, if we think about how much time and energy we waste doing these things and it takes away, especially, I'm single and I run a business. So, it works for moms and it works for women like me too. Like I don't have a partner, so I need systems so that we can get everything done. So I love that idea. And one thing came to me as you were talking, I think my initial skepticism probably wasn't so much AI as this idea of our brains all being hooked up to a cloud. That's when I was like, they're trying to replace God, which is a little bit different concept, right? But it's learning from our brain to strengthen AI. I'm sure that's a big part of the purpose. Um,
Yeah.
but it's kind of this like utopia. I do think there are people that take it so far. And to your point, discernment is so important. Like you said, if it doesn't feel right to you and you want to stay analog with paper receipts and you're happy, great. If you can utilize it in a way that feels good to you and you feel you enhance your life, like it's how you view it and what you take. But Marissa, you mentioned something before we hopped on that I really want to talk about because I'm a huge proponent too. And you were talking about how integrity is so important to you and how you feel it's going to be vital to businesses in 2024. So I would love to kind of dig in and hear from you about that.
Yeah. So from a technological transformation perspective, we're clearly in a change in how we do business
Mm-hmm.
and where we do business. AI is coming onto the scene. We're hearing more about the metaverse. We're hearing about different alternative cryptocurrencies. So there's lots of technologies. Robotics are getting better and more pervasive and prevalent. So we're seeing all these technologies that are developing really quickly, all at the same time. And
Mm-hmm.
what I saw in the crypto wave, I saw it in the Web3 wave, and I saw it in the AI. First part of it is you can check out Gartner's hype cycle. It's a great graph. And there's this initial hype. And we faced it with all of those where people were making promises that didn't make any logical sense. Anyone who's run and operated a
Mm-hmm.
business is going, ooh, that's going to be tough to pull off. How are you going to do that? And yet people were buying into it and just buying the hype and getting so excited. And then there's the trough of disillusionment when people realize, oh, uh, it's not all, it's not, I can't really fire my whole marketing team. I still need
Mm-hmm.
some humans. Oh, I fully offloaded my content team because someone told me that this one marketing AI, and now my stuff sounds like everyone else's. There's
Yep.
reasons for that. So there is this element of leadership now, which is defining the AI policies. And I don't think this is an all or nothing thing. I do think this is a moment where leaders can tune into their integrity and go, okay, here are the situations when it's great to use AI. And here are the situations where in our organization, we always do
Mm-hmm.
things the human to human way. And that kind of a distinction, that kind of flag in the
Yeah.
sand, not only from a leadership perspective is important, it's vital because we don't have established social conventions and norms on how to use this stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
when we don't have good boundaries, we saw it with personal computers, we saw it with smartphones and social media. Like we need good boundaries around this stuff, or else
Yeah.
um, people who then it comes to a values thing, and people who are not living in alignment with their values or with a value system that is good for a community, when they're making decisions for themselves and their
Mm-hmm.
own benefit, it affects everybody. It affects the business landscape. And I think that we as a society post pandemic are at a place where we're not so trustworthy. um,
Yeah.
Trust in our major institutions has been at all-time lows since before the
Yep.
pandemic. So I'm not saying anything that didn't exist.
Yeah.
But also there's millennials, with Gen Z, and I argue this is from a beliefs place and a values place, not a generational place. But we're just wanting more from leadership. We want
Mm-hmm.
more from our brands. It's not okay to just tell me that the thing is on 30% sale and then, oh, we had an error with our cart, so we extended the sale. It's like everybody knows that play in the playbook. Just say
Right.
we're extending it one more day so you have more chance to take advantage of the offer. Like just say that. Don't lie, make up this dumb lie that doesn't matter. So anyway, it's like there's these moments where
I
you
love
have,
it.
and I'll have conversations with these people. I'm often in a gatekeeper position for the entrepreneurs that I
Yep.
work with. So I'm and empowered in a role where I'm evaluating proposals and I'm going, yes, no, and here's why.
Yeah.
And I am so skeptical when you
Yeah.
get promised the world, and some of these things may or may not be technologically feasible, but it's like, oh, it will have this and it will do this when? In 6 months, in 2 years? Who's run a technology team and shipped on time. I don't know. Like maybe
No
others
one.
have when they've created something that hasn't ever existed. It's so interesting. So anyway, uh, we're right to feel skeptical. We're right to ask questions, and I think societally and culturally, we've got to be okay about disagreeing on some of these hard values things, because we cannot. This is not a time to outsource integrity
100%.
to governments and large organizations, assuming that they're going to have everybody's interests in mind.
Oh, yeah. I think people are hungry for a return to empathetic, logical conversations, right? So I know I am. Well, Marissa, we could go on, but I do know you have another commitment and I'd love to honor your time. Thank you so much. This is fascinating. I think we might actually do a panel and have a couple of business owners on here and have you back, and we can facilitate that conversation to see how they're using AI. That would be kind of fun. But thank you so much for joining today. I hope that I'll be in California next week. So hopefully I'll see you, if not in the next few months. And have a great day. And for everyone listening, just remember, I feel compelled, especially after this conversation, to talk about it, but it was woven throughout. The world needs more love right now. So, how are you going to show up in love today? Let's not forget that human connection of heart to heart. Even if you take God out of it, the best marketing, the best campaigns, the best advertising, the best communication is really heart to heart. So, how can you show up more in love today, and wearing your heart, right? So, Marissa, thank you so much. I loved our conversation. Can't wait to continue it. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you so much, April. Beautifully said. Take care, everybody.